When President Trump first imposed tariffs on goods from China and other countries, Wall Street seemed to approve. The stock market surged. Some industries like steel saw a short-term boost. Jobs came back, at least for a while. This initial success fueled Trump's belief in tariffs as a tool to revitalize American manufacturing. However, this early optimism was short-lived. The stock market gains proved unsustainable. The long-term consequences of these protectionist policies soon became apparent. Economists began warning of a looming economic slowdown. They argued that tariffs would disrupt global supply chains. These disruptions would lead to higher costs for businesses. Ultimately, these costs would be passed on to consumers, dampening demand. The projected economic slowdown would result in lower GDP growth. Unemployment would rise. The trade war, initially touted as a win for the US economy, threatened to hurt American businesses and workers. One of the most immediate and noticeable consequences of the tariffs was rising inflation. Tariffs on Chinese goods in particular made everyday products more expensive for American consumers. From electronics to clothing, the prices of imported goods increased significantly. This tariff-driven inflation placed a significant burden on American households. The cost of living rose and real wages stagnated. The tariffs, meant to protect American jobs, were eroding the purchasing power of American families. While consumers felt the pinch of higher prices, some corporations saw an opportunity for profit. Companies used the tariffs as an excuse to raise prices beyond what was justified by the increased cost of imported goods. This practice, known as profiteering, further fueled inflation and angered consumers. The Federal Trade Commission launched investigations into potential cases of price gouging related to the tariffs. The Trump administration's trade policies, while claiming to protect American workers, were lining the pockets of some corporations at the expense of consumers. Section 5. Trade Wars, a Global Standoff. The tariffs ignited trade tensions between the United States and its major trading partners, particularly China. China retaliated with tariffs of its own on American goods. This tit-for-tat escalation of tariffs disrupted global trade flows and created uncertainty in the global economy. The trade war between the world's two largest economies had ripple effects across the globe. Other countries were forced to take sides or navigate the complexities of a fragmented trade landscape. Section 6. Echoes of the Past, Lessons from History. The tariffs imposed by the Trump administration drew comparisons to the infamous Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930. The Smoot-Hawley tariffs, widely seen as exacerbating the Great Depression, raised tariffs on thousands of imported goods. While the scale of Trump's tariffs was not as extensive as Smoot-Hawley, economists warned of similar consequences. They argued that protectionist trade policies would ultimately harm the global economy and lead to job losses. Section 7. A Nation Divided, Politics of Tariffs. The tariffs became a deeply divisive issue in American politics. Trump's supporters, particularly those in manufacturing communities that had been hit hard by globalization, viewed the tariffs as necessary to protect American jobs and industries. However, Democrats and many economists criticized the tariffs as counterproductive and harmful to the overall economy. They argued that the tariffs would lead to higher prices for consumers, hurt businesses that rely on imports, and damage global trade relationships. Section 8. Central banks react, navigating uncertainty. The tariffs and the ensuing trade war created uncertainty in the global economy, prompting responses from major central banks. The Federal Reserve, tasked with maintaining price stability and full employment in the United States, faced a dilemma. The tariffs were contributing to inflation, which would normally warrant an increase in interest rates. However, raising rates could also slow economic growth, a concern given the projected slowdown caused by the trade war. Section 9. A failing grade, long-term costs outweigh short-term gains. The tariffs imposed by the Trump administration, while initially presented as a way to revive American manufacturing and bring back jobs, ultimately proved to be a flawed policy. The short-term gains in certain sectors were outweighed by the long-term costs to the overall economy. The tariffs led to higher prices for consumers, hurt businesses that rely on global supply chains, and ignited a trade war with China. The economic slowdown, rising inflation, and global trade tensions that resulted from these protectionist policies serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of retreating from free trade.